And he said, yeah, it's the people that are curious and come up with these different ways of approaching the world that will succeed in the
That
new
makes
world.
sense.
Hi, everyone. This week we're talking about futurists and futurology, particularly a man by the name of John Saine, who's a best-selling author, futurist, and keynote speaker who has a passion for psychology and technology. One of my favorite podcasters actually had an episode with him this week, and I found some of the points he discussed really interesting, and we just wanted to share that with you. For anyone who doesn't know about futurists, they're people who specialize or have an interest in futurology, which is the attempt to systematically explore predictions and possibilities about the future and how they can emerge from the present, whether that's in human society, but more particularly about life on Earth in general. So I'll throw to Amanda just to formally introduce the show.
You know, this sounds like a heavy topic. We'll see how this one goes. But welcome to Settling's Not an Option. I'm Amanda Stanhope. I'm here with my co-host, Adam Nebbs, and we are here to tell you the settling's not an option. Whether you feel like you have settled in your personal life, in your career, or in the way that you treat yourself, again, we're here to tell you the settling's not an option. So you can always support us. We would really appreciate it if you can do all the things that help the algorithm gods give us some attention. So like, comment, share, all the stuff that you guys already know that you can do to help us out. And you can also really help us out by donating as little as $1 to us to help us get some new equipment. And there will be a link in the description to go over to Ko-fi to do that. And one other thing that I got to point out, because I forgot to tell Adam, but look, for people who are in the know, I don't have anything on my wrist anymore.
Oh, what?
I it again.
Oh, jeez.
So for people who are in the know,
having the Iron Man arm.
No, I broke my wrist like 7 weeks ago, and so this is the first week on the show where I actually have my arm again. So without any brace or anything, so that's exciting. So it's been an exciting week here at the Stanhope house, a two-handed week. Two-handed week. But anyways, back to what we were going to talk about. So we have 3 topics that we're going to hit over 3 different 15-minute segments is what we're going to strive for here. And the first topic is, are we shifting into a new world where our old ways are not going to serve us anymore? The second topic is, what will success look like in this new world? And the third topic is, how can we think our way into a better future? So that means it's your turn again, Adam. So are we shifting into a new world where our old ways are not going to serve us anymore?
That's a good question, Amanda. It's a good
serious question. It's really serious.
All right, I've hit the timer.
All right.
I'm going to try and stick to 15 minutes on this one. Well, I found this really interesting because one of the key things I learned about was John Saine talked about a book called The Fourth Turning.
Okay.
So that's by 2 authors, William Strauss and Neil Howe. And they're the ones that came up with the archetypes of generations. So the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, that. So I didn't know that. I guess that was never a question I asked myself, like, who came up with the generations? I was like, the generations have always been around. They just,
you don't think about it. Yeah.
Don't think about what's behind it. But also in their book, The Fourth Turning, they have this theory that every 80 years, there's a cycle of rebirth, basically, where all of the pillars of society, like economics, politics, social structures, whatever it is, that all falls apart. And then we have a new kind of structure emerge.
Okay.
So the last structure was, the last cyclical change was World War II, because after that, everything kind of rechanged. And John Saine was talking about how we are due for another 80-year cycle. And it just so happens that now we've got a pandemic.
Yeah, my brain you just blow my mind.
Yeah, that's what we want. This is what we
I'm
want.
like thinking that through, but because that would have been in the 40s. Yeah, World War II.
And so what I found particularly interesting about it is he was saying, and it's something that all of us here, I don't know if you've heard many people say it, but when everyone's like, oh, when the pandemic ends, like, and everything goes back to normal.
Yeah, right.
And he specifically said, he's like, but we're not going back to normal.
No, exactly.
Yeah. People were like, no, I'm not going to believe that. Everything's going to shift back. But like, you just even think about it logically. It's like, it's going to take a long time for this pandemic to come to an end,
Right.
even after all the vaccinations go through, and that's hoping that the vaccinations all work.
Right.
Like, then there's the economic ramifications and all the money that's been funneled out to kind of help people. So that's going to change everything. And I think, like, also we've got to remember that, like, so many people in the world right now would be changing their mindsets because they've had all this time to sit at home, if you've not been immediately impacted, to sit and think about your life. So those people are going to start influencing it. Plus, we've got all those other Gen Z or whatever coming through, and they're challenging the status quo. So it means that the normal is going to go. But the point that he mentions about, like, what we need to do to kind of get ready for this new cycle, because he said it's quite scary. A lot of people will be scared. He said we need to learn to mourn our future memories.
Mourn our future memories?
I was like, what does this mean? But he made a really good point. He's like, so we always think of memories as like a past thing.
Oh,
but he said,
okay.
Yeah, but he said we create these future memories, which is like the house you're going to buy, or the wedding you're going to have, or all the different things that you think about. He said we've got to mourn those future memories because COVID's changed it all. So he said, treat it like going through the 5 stages of grief, which for a lot of people is, denial right now. They're like, nah, everything's going to go back to normal.
True. Oh, wow. Yeah.
And he said the ones that kind of push through those 5 cycles and get to acceptance, which is the last one, quickly, can then move on. They're like, I'm not stuck in the past. I'm already carving my way forward. So, I'm keen to throw it to you and get your thoughts on all that information.
Well, that's really awesome. I never thought about it as mourning. Well, I never thought of it as going through the 5 stages of grief or whatever you want to call them. But it is the same process. So I want to say that's very interesting, but I'm trying not to say interesting. Because for those who don't know, that you overuse that word. So
it's true.
It's true. It's my word. But but it is very interesting. But no, I never thought of it like that. But it makes a lot of sense to me because so in this way, I'm interested to see where this conversation is going to go, because I feel like so many people are living in the future and it affects your present so much instead of just living in the present. Like, it's funny to me that you would mourn something that hasn't even happened yet.
Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I'm not saying I wouldn't do it myself, but it is just an odd thing to think about.
Yeah, it is.
It's like, why are you letting something that hasn't even happened affect your state of being today?
Yeah. But like, what I'd be interested about, so like, I don't know, throwing you on the spot, but what, like, if you think about the concept of future memories or whatever, what would be your future memories? Like, if you look at work, you don't have to go through relationships, but you know, everything in your life, what are you projecting towards, or what do you see?
Well, and I guess we were just talking before the show about that my brother and I have concert tickets that the concert got canceled last summer. It got rescheduled for this summer, and now it looks like it's probably going to be canceled again. That's definitely one. And I mean, it doesn't take me too long to mourn that, but it is very disappointing because we're really looking forward to it. It's bands we really like. Plus, I like spending time with my brother. We don't get to spend that much time, just the two of us bonding, over some good music. And so, I mourn that for a little while, I suppose, but I guess I get past it pretty quick. But that's one I can think of. There aren't, and I've had like where we had to cancel a vacation. So, these things that you kind of were looking forward to. Or I can definitely see that it hasn't happened to me, but definitely like if someone had a wedding scheduled, like that would be really hard.
Yeah.
Other than that, I don't know. I can't think of anything major, like anything life changing. But I could see, too, like what if you were just going to change jobs or something, and you had just maybe you even moved across the country for a new job, and then all of a sudden that job is postponed, or maybe it's not even available anymore, and now you've moved yourself and maybe your whole family. You get into those kind of circumstances, and I could see that could really throw people for a loop.
Yeah, like he talked about his work specifically, and he said like he was he'd sent a book, his fourth book, to the publisher,
Yeah.
or editor or whatever the stage was, and it just wasn't relevant anymore because of COVID.
Oh,
so he had
yeah.
to scratch that book and all that work, had to scratch all of his like keynote talks because again it was all redundant, and so he had to mourn like all the conferences he'd organized, like his next book being released, had to mourn all that and then recreate. And that's what he's done. And he said like getting to that acceptance point has given him a platform to be creative and then craft a whole new path forward. And he's like, so people that are stuck in like denial or anger, they're not realizing it's like you're wasting time. You need to process this and get to acceptance, and then you can create a new path for yourself. So,
okay, yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, because I think you're right. So many people have, and I feel like I've accepted the new normal pretty well. But also, I will say with a caveat that my life hasn't been impacted that much.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's probably easier for me to accept the way things have changed. Plus, I'm kind of a homebody anyway, so it's not a big deal for me to be at home. I already worked at home before the pandemic. And so, but I could definitely understand how other people, it would take a long time to accept that things have changed.
Yeah. And I guess as well, it's the unknown. It's like, who knows what the new world's going to look like? You know, it is scary, because he said it's like, he goes, people could be really unhappy in the old world, or whatever you want to call it,
right?
But he said, but it's there's a comfort in it because it's known, and people don't like the unknown. Like that's something Brené Brown talks about a lot, like with the with her concept of the FFT and stuff. It's like people, and I'll admit that I like the known.
Well, of course,
I really don't work well with the unknown, so I totally get why people, might be like, no, I'm just going to deny this is changing because I don't want to deal with that right now.
Well, yeah, of course. But then I guess, so I'm wondering what old ways, I'll put you on the spot.
Yeah.
So what old ways, so we're talking about old ways that might not work anymore going forward. What old ways do you see that people would have to let go of and accept that they have to let go of?
Well, it kind of ties nicely into the next point, which is around success. So I think that was probably inevitable anyways, whether the pandemic happened or not, because I think the Gen Zs were really challenging what success looks like and how to live your life. It doesn't have to be the ways of old or the ways that the baby boomers defined that we have to live. So I think, the old ways of working, the old ways of seeing the world and interacting with the world will change. It's going to be some core stuff that people are going to struggle with because I think they are so set in their ways. Yeah. And again, like I almost kind of see it as a good thing, because so the work that we're doing, right, and the messages we're trying to share, I feel like it's going to be a lot easier for these messages to resonate with people in the new world, where people are more open to new ways of thinking,
right? Because
they have to. Whereas in the old world right now, it's like I almost feel there is like there's people that just can't even hear you because they're like, I'm sorry, you're on this frequency, but I'm on this frequency, so I can't even hear you right now. Whereas they might start moving into this new frequency, and then it opens up that more people might change. At least I hope so. And that might increase, we might have more subscribers. We might have more views. No.
We might finally get to meet all these people that we keep talking about meeting.
Yeah, exactly. Like all the people that we name drop,
exactly. All our buddies.
But what are your thoughts? What other areas do you think that would you agree with me, or do you think there's some other areas too?
No, I definitely agree. I just haven't really thought about it much. That's why I was curious. I mean, I definitely can see work changing. But even beyond that, I don't know. I wonder if some things will just catch on, like just silly things. Like we were talking before the show too about like going to a bar, because my husband and I actually went to a bar for the first time in over a year. And being seated, that they actually seat you now instead of, and so, you wonder if things like that will catch on and just be the new normal, where to us, that's not normal, although it's very nice. And I think just a lot of things, even like this form of communication, you think of how many people are on Zoom right now who never would have been on Zoom. I mean, people older than me, like I was never really on Zoom too much before the pandemic. And so then you take people older than me too, that probably have never even been on it. And now it's just the daily. Like I know I have one friend who she has a meeting every morning. Like she's a director or whatever. So they have like a director's meeting every morning on Zoom. And I was like, that would just be the new normal. And now that you started that, and now not everybody has to be in the same building, and not everybody has to be in the same conference room. And so, yeah, it'll change the communication a lot. I'm just curious to know what that will mean for the long term, but I don't know if it's good or bad. But
I was just thinking that, because I'm like, it's good that it's going to help, especially like with work. It means that jobs that were out of reach for some people because of geography now open up.
Yeah.
But I do worry, to a certain part of me worries that it's like, if too much of this becomes the thing, it could further damage like communication.
Right.
How important is it being able to see someone face to face and see their body language and give them a hug, or, so.
Well, and hugging, that's the other thing. Now you wonder about that with kids coming up now, because, they're not allowed to touch each other. Well, I mean, okay. In a kid appropriate way. But, like they're not allowed to give their friends a hug or even shake hands or anything. So then if we go back, I'm like, are these kids going to think it's really weird to have any kind of physical contact with someone?
Well, I hope not. I think that's because I guess we're talking about big structural stuff here and big social norms. But I think ultimately the buck will still stop with the parents. Like the parents still need to teach their kids it's good to hug. It's good to kind of do that stuff. And because I guess actually I just thought then, just because we're moving into a new world doesn't mean that it's going to be perfect. There's going to be a whole lot of new problems that pop up, you know? And so like, I think it's going to be good, and it's going to change some crappy stuff that's hanging around that's redundant, but it's still going to be our challenge that we individually have to be enlightened enough to navigate the societal crap, I guess.
Right. Yeah. And that, exactly. So,
yeah.
Okay.
So there you go. That's the
there
end
we
of
go. That was our 15 minutes.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I'll reset.
So we're ready for the second point, I think.
The second question. The second one is, what will success look like in this new world?
Yeah.
Cool. So just an easy one to answer, hey? I always make the really easy questions.
Yes, you do.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit in our leadership episode, but so there's a plug for that episode. Please go and listen to the leadership one.
Yes, I'll put a link in the description, yes.
We'll put a link in there. But we talked a little bit about success, and particularly in that case around like the domain of work, and everyone holding up Elon Musk as like the person to follow. He works 120 hours a week. He's like a billionaire, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, whether that's going to cut the mustard is what we define as success anymore. Because really, I think what would epitomize success in this old world is earn as much money as possible, get as, popular as possible, and get as much stuff as possible.
Sure.
And already that's beginning to change. Like Amanda and I talked a little bit about minimalism before the show, and like it feels like maybe some people are like moving towards essentialism and minimalism now. But yeah, do you think maybe success before was like get the biggest it was keeping up with the Joneses, get the most money, get the biggest job,
Right.
like that was success in the old world.
Yes, and I think it's interesting now that you're saying that. See, interesting. It's interesting that we're gonna start a drinking game for our
We will. The audience will be like off their
audience.
face, but that's
Every
fine.
time I say interesting, take a shot. No, but so because it's connected, I think to we started out talking about that it's a cycle that would have started during World War II, and I think that standard was set during World War II, or not during, but when all the troops came home. I don't know what it was like in Australia, but here in the United States, at least, the picture I have in my mind is when the troops came back, they settled into the suburbs. They got jobs. They settled into the suburbs with their wives and kids and their, 2.5 kids and a dog and their, nice car and their nice lawn and all this stuff. And I think that's probably when that drive for material success really started, because before, I'm sure it's always been there, but I'm guessing before that it wasn't as, it's always been there, but I think it was for the 1%ers. Like there was always this class of people that would have achieved that level of material success. And then I think probably that was a time that it was more available to the masses to have some show of material success.
Yeah.
And so it's probably that's when it started. And so if we're on that cycle, we're at the end of that cycle where the material success is not going to be as important to this next generation.
Yeah.
I hope it's not. I really think
Yeah.
it's not. I don't think it's going to be, and I really hope it's not. Is that,
Yeah.
did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope that it's coming to an end, because I don't think it's, it's the be all and end all. I think, I hope we move away from like external rewards to internal rewards, because I think if you feel like you can just enjoy life as it comes, and you enjoy even like the dips, and you enjoy like the challenges of life and work and all that stuff, like that's very rewarding. And like, I think that's where both you and I get a lot of our, happiness from, is from those things. Like, whereas, material possessions, I don't know, it's like, it serves a purpose for a time. It's like, I heard something the other day actually about dopamine.
Okay.
Which I found really interesting.
Okay.
Particularly in regards to technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they said that they found that it's the wanting stage that releases the most amount of dopamine.
Oh.
So like basically it starts to move up when you're in that wanting stage. Like I want to look at my LinkedIn account, and see how many likes I got or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And then it's that wanting where it's like really building, and you're like, I need to satiate that. Then when you actually click on LinkedIn and you see you've got it, it kind of flattens out, and then it comes back down. And then again, you want that dopamine hit. And so I feel like that's the world that we're in as well, is where it's like everyone's just so like keen. I certainly am, and I'm really trying to break the habit, but it's so hard, where I'm just always caught up in that wanting phase of like, expecting something, and then I get it, and then I'm like, I've got it now. So it does tell me it's like, it's the pursuit. It really is like the pursuit of something. It's not getting it, because you get it and then you're like, oh, I've got it. And like, it's, I don't know, it's weird, right?
Well, and then the next time you're starting at that base level.
Yeah.
So I don't know, say that post that you put on LinkedIn got 100 likes. Well, next time you're not going to be happy with 100 likes. The next time it's going to have to be 150. And then the next time it's going to have to be 200. And so it's not only that you're wanting, but it's that you don't slide back down to zero again. After you get what you want, you don't slide back down to zero. So you always are going to be wanting more. And it's an easy trap to find yourself in.
Now, I mean, that is a good comment. That's a really interesting one. I'm geeking out.
That it's a good trap to find yourself in.
The act itself is not good, but I had not thought about that baseline thing. That's scary.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Sorry.
I've been hearing about
Continue.
that lately. I've watched a couple videos lately that were talking about that. And so it's interesting that we're talking about this because that you brought it up because I have just come across that recently too. But it makes so much sense. It's just something you don't ever stop to think about. But yeah, so I think it's really important. And we've talked in other episodes about success. And well, we had the high achiever one about what it means to be a high achiever. So I'll link that in the description too, because in that one, we talked a lot about success and how, redefining success for yourself can just lead to a whole better future for yourself. Yeah. But I guess I'm curious. Let's see how much time we have in this segment left. Okay. So I'm curious about what a futurist would think about success. Because if they're trying to somehow mold their future or predict what their future is going to be, how would they feel successful today? I'm kind of trying to think of how they reconcile those two things.
Well, I think from what I've heard, because that's a really good question, I think the futurists that I've listened to, basically, they don't look at the present as being any different to the future. So what I mean by that is like, they're basically like, the way I act right now is creating the future. So they're just like, you kind of, that like to the point of the whole future memories thing, you know, rather than drawing on past memories and saying, I'm going to let my past influence my future or my, you know, my present and then my future. They're just saying right now, I'm going to think my way into the future that I want because it's going to make it more likely to occur. Which, you know, at first I was like, what? Like, how does this work? But I think it does. I don't think it's necessarily an easy thing to do.
Right.
You know, but I think there's more and more people now realizing that you do have more control than you think because, you know, some people do think they're slaves to the past. They're like, I can't get away from what happened to me in my childhood or whatever. Not that I'm, you know, criticizing anyone who's in that boat, but it's just saying, you know, that's, you know, he would almost kind of categorize that as like, John, that is, would categorize that as like a victim mentality, being like, I can't get away from that. That my future is based on that. Whereas I think a futurist is saying, you know, no, you decide right now. You put that past stuff to bed and you now craft the future you want, I guess.
So it's more like, I see what you mean, where you're shifting from your future, thinking that your future is based on your past to seeing that your future is based on the now.
Yeah. Which kind of works in line with, you know, Eckhart Tolle, doesn't it? You know,
I don't know. That's what I was thinking about too, because those in the know also know that we both are fans of Eckhart Tolle. But I don't know, because I think he would say, I think that's the end result of what he preaches, or preaches probably what he promotes, is that by focusing on the now, you will have a better future. But I don't feel like he thinks about the future as much.
No, I think you're right, actually. He'd just talk about the now. He'd be like, no, you've missed my whole point. It's the now.
Yeah, but I know it's hard to wrap your brain around it, because you do want it, and that's where I don't know, because you do want to focus on the now, but if you're not focusing on the future too, or like, there has to be some balance, because otherwise, what difference does what you're doing now make?
Yeah.
But again, I guess maybe that's missing the point too, because you're supposed to just be enjoying what you're doing right now and not worrying about how it's going to work out for you in the future. I don't know. That doesn't sound good either, though.
It's a tricky one.
There has to be a happy mean or a happy medium there somewhere.
Well, like, maybe it's, you know, as you say, a happy medium. Like, enjoy the now, whatever the now is, enjoy it, you know. And if you're not enjoying it, that's when you should shift it. And know that it's not only like your enjoyment now, but it's going to continue to influence your future.
Sure.
But but yeah, I guess it is important to remember. I was thinking just then, like your future's never, like I guess that's what Tolley says. Your future's never a thing. It's always the now, because
Right.
the future's now just this abstract concept.
Right.
But then basically, when the time clicks over, then it now becomes the now. It's never, you never go, oh, I'm in the future now.
Yeah. Right.
This is where we could get ourselves very confused. Everyone at this
Walking in
point is going,
circles.
what the hell is this guy talking about? But I guess, so
Yeah.
maybe that's the point, is it's going to change your future, which will always be your now. So just enjoy the now.
Right.
And make sure that it's the best it can be, I guess. Something to that effect.
Well, and I guess maybe the point too is, now that we're talking about it more, that you would focus on what success looks like for you in the future.
Mm.
Or not that you're focused on it all the time though, but you take a time where you sit down and you dedicate some time to figuring that out. Because once you figured that out, you could more effectively use your current time, and you'd be able to make decisions in the now. You'd be able to make decisions in the now because you know where you want to be in the future, or where you're trying to go. And maybe it would be so ingrained in you, if you were really good at it, maybe it would be so ingrained in you that you wouldn't focus on in the now. You're not even focused on that goal of yours, we'll say, this goal in the future, but it's so ingrained in you that you automatically make decisions that get you closer to it.
Yeah. That's
or you automatically start recognizing opportunities that are going to get you closer to that. So maybe that's more what it's about. It's kind of fashioning this future so that you can make better choices.
I like that. I want to figure out how to do that. So
I think we're getting there. We're both getting there.
We're getting there, but again, I think it's the journey. It's not, it's enjoying the journey. And just to kind of, I suppose, wrap up this point, because one of the things he talks about is the importance of being unique and authentic and being curious. Because he said, in the new world, he said, you're going to need to find what you're curious about and couple that with what you're, what you think can make a difference, what you're good at. So I guess it ties into that ikigai thing, your reason for being and all that. And he said, it's the people that are curious and come up with these different ways of approaching the world that will succeed in the
That
new
makes
world.
sense.
So he talked about like how he couples a whole bunch of things together. So I think, which is the strategy piece and then the futurism piece. And he's like got all these different interests which all intersect, and he then surrounds himself with all these people that complement that kind of way of living, which he said is also a very important thing to do. And he said that is his differentiator, like that's, they can say it's only him that kind of brings that offering, because he said, the people that kind of go, I'm just going to go down the normal path. And he said, how many doctors out there, how many engineers out there, how many, whatever it may be. He said, those people, there's so many of them. You need to find how you can maybe take that and bring your curiosity to it, which I thought was interesting.
Yes. Cheers. No. Yeah, because those are you're right. And I don't know, that's always been true, I suppose, but those are the people who succeed, the people who can take something and just put a little spin on it to make it a little different. No, that's great. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, so it's an interesting thing. I think people have got to think about the curiosity was the big word he used in there. Just get really curious. And I guess I kind of, I feel like it's a validator for what we're doing, because I think about you with the expectation gaps and where you're going with that.
I know, I was just thinking that's my tagline, stay curious.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, we haven't done a plug for that yet. But, that's you staying curious. Literally, it's built into your slogan. Yes. And that's your differentiator. That's you bringing your thoughts to the table and making people deliberate thinkers.
True.
And then I think about with what I'm doing is, trying to find my place. I think workplace mental health is a neglected area. There's a lot of opportunities. And so for me, I'm like, well, I'm curious about how we can change workplaces and where to begin. that's what I'm working on. So again, whereas I feel like if I'd been working in the bank still, I'd feel quite bummed out right now. I'd be like, oh, like I'm kind of in that category where I
Yeah.
haven't really gotten curious. I've just kind of gone, well, this makes good money. I don't
Right.
enjoy it, but I'll just run with it. So wherever people are now, they're going to have to face that curiosity question.
I like that. Yeah, find out what you're curious about, and that will lead you to your success.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
that's a good line. See, that could go in the little snippet at the start.
No. You're going to be in the snippet at the start.
Thank
So
you.
you better come up with a good line.
Oh no, I've got look. Maybe the next one. No pressure.
The pressure's on. No.
So that's 15 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll move to the next one.
Yeah.
Which
So
is,
how can we think our way into a better future?
so we talked about Joe Dispenza a little bit in past episodes,
Yeah.
and how much we love Joe. He's another person that we'll get on the show because we just love him so much.
Oh yeah, he's signing up. Yeah, he's waiting at our door. Yeah.
He's waiting. I think he's like, are you guys going to get me on the show? But but they talk a lot about to the point of creating your future through your thoughts.
Yeah.
So if I just talk about John Saney for a minute, there's something that he said which I thought was like amazing, which was about your past memories. And he said, with your past memories, he said they should serve you. They should only be there to serve you. So grab the good ones and hold on to them. But with the bad ones, he said you've got to navigate your way through that. So for example, he talks about his father, and he said when he was young, his father was very abusive. His mother actually took him and his brother away from the household at a young age because of the abuse and the violence there.
Okay.
And he then spent years and years of his life being really angry and resentful at his dad. And what that influenced in the present was that every interaction he had with a man, he considered them to be violent and aggressive.
Sure.
And it had a negative impact on his business relationships, his mateships, all those things, because he just saw men as violent and unreliable.
Okay.
And so he said he had to sit down and think about it. And he looked at his dad and thought, well, when my dad was growing up in, South Africa, I believe it was, he didn't have access to the opportunities to kind of reflect on who he was and work on himself. Sure. So in a way, he started looking at it through a different lens, thinking, I feel sorry for my dad that he didn't have the opportunities to develop himself.
Yeah.
But then he also said, well, I wouldn't be in the boat that I am now, changing people's lives, if not for my dad's abusive relationship. He's kind of brought me down the path that I need to be in. So instantly he's taken what's a really negative memory, damaging all his relationships with men, and flipped it on its head. And so I thought that was interesting. And I was like, I had 2 points to it. So I'm really curious for your points here.
All right.
One is I was like, okay, so, do you sit down and maybe reflect on, okay, what are the bad memories that are not serving me? But then I also wondered, what about those memories or those parts of your brain that you block out because they are so painful? Like, how do you get access to them? Do you need to seek a professional or, kind of get into a spiritual path? Like, I'm curious as to your thoughts on that.
All right. Well, first, I don't know that you want to, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not professionally trained in this, but my feeling is that you don't want to dwell on the past. You don't want to go into those feelings until what you want to do is become self-aware enough that you notice when you're acting out of character or when your actions are not in line with your core values, or however you want to say it. Or when your actions are impeding your success that you've thought about, the success that you see in the future. And then, so I think first you just become self-aware enough to notice these tendencies in yourself. And then when you do, you can drill down on, okay, what's causing this? And start drilling down at a past memory or past experience that might be influencing the way that you're handling the current situation. And then I think you really want to drill down on that as much as you can, because it's affecting you right now. What I would think would be maybe harmful to people is reflecting on past harmful memories or whatever for no reason.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because to me, I feel like you could just end up going down a deep, dark hole, or ending up in a deep, dark hole of depression.
Yeah,
If you're
true.
going to sit there and just think about, oh, what's every bad thing that's ever happened to me? Why did it happen? You know, like, that's a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I think it might just be counterproductive. And some things are better left in the past. And I think if you know, if you're to the point where you need professional help, then yeah, you probably need to go into some of those things that you've repressed. You know, some of
Yeah.
those memories that you talked about that you've repressed, but otherwise they're repressed for a reason. I think.
Yeah. Well,
Because
yeah. I mean,
they're not
your brain
serving you. And if they're not serving
Yeah.
you, why spend any energy? Okay, if they're not serving you, and if addressing them isn't going to help you somehow, why spend any energy thinking about them? I guess is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I was trying to figure out how you'd approach it. Like, I think, as you say, it's the awareness. So if you do something and you're like, this is not serving me right now, this is like, you know, so it could be anything, your frustrations with something.
Right.
Maybe that's where you go, all right, now I'm going to figure out where's this coming from, and then try and deal with that. As opposed to, yeah, I suppose makes me laugh now thinking about it. Someone going, all right, I'll just set up in my calendar today a day of trauma. All right, let's go through. So from 8 to 9, I'll talk about all my childhood bullying. You know, yeah, probably not going to work.
9 to 10. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad I asked you that question, because there you go. I'll scratch that off my calendar now.
I'm like, Adam, don't go into a hole of depression between now and next week, okay?
Yeah. I'll be like, I'm sorry, I can't record next Friday. That's my trauma day. Oh, okay, don't worry.
Right. Well, and especially, I think.
Sorry, you go.
Oh, what?
Oh, no, you go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I guess that would tie more into the futurist perspective, too. Is that you're only addressing things that are affecting your future.
Yes.
But, yeah. But that's. Yeah, I was going to say it's interesting, but I won't say that's interesting.
Right. We're going to count that in the drinking game, guys, so take another drink.
Yeah, I know. I just said it twice, again, on purpose. But anyways, but the thinking, so as far as thinking yourself into a better future, so you talked about Dispenza. Is there anyone else that you've listened to or heard about that?
No, there'd be heaps, I'm sure, but the main ones because John Saini's talking about how he uses a lot of Dispenza's teachings, because I feel like there'll be like almost a school of Joe Dispenza where a lot of people are picking up on his stuff. And so, yeah, I probably have heard some guests maybe on other podcasts talking about how they've used it. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's getting a lot of traction. But something else that he said, which makes sense, was he was talking about like the problem with past memories is they're only found to be like 50% accurate. And the rest is like your subjective views getting applied to that memory, which we know is true.
Right.
Like, I think the example, you know, can't remember if I brought it up in the past, and again, like, it's a sensitive topic, but was the people's memories of the 9/11 attacks.
Oh,
you know,
no, we haven't talked about that. No.
Yeah, so they found studies where people have said, this is how I've seen things happening on that day.
Yeah.
Which was obviously an incredibly traumatic day for a lot of people. But people's memories were wrong. Like, they've literally found that the way people saw certain things, I think it was people on the ground that saw, you know, the dust and blah, blah, blah. What they saw wasn't actually what happened. Right. So again, it's like, and there's studies that you've seen where your brain will fill in the blanks. Mm-hmm. Like, have you seen that test you can do where they jumble up a bunch of letters, but your brain, even though like it'll just look at a couple of the key letters in a word and it'll it'll reframe it into what it is. That still trips me out. I'm like, how is my brain doing that? But again, it makes you think the memories you've got of the past.
True.
You can't trust them. If they're influencing your present and your future, well, they're not, you know, they're not reliable. So you've got to be careful with them.
Well, and that's a good step to take too in your self-awareness as you're trying to create this better future for yourself and for the world, maybe, depending on what your aspirations are, is to keep that in mind, that what you're recollecting probably didn't even happen. Because I have not thought of that. See, that's a good point, because I hadn't really thought about that ever. I mean, I know that to be true, but I guess I've never really thought about that fact and how much just stuff that you just make up affects your your present life and your future life.
That's scary.
We're really stupid, aren't we? We
are.
We do the stupidest things to ourselves.
And that's it, because you think as well, how many times would people, and I've done it, where you've created a story of something that's happened and that's ruined, I don't know, ruined your day, ruined your week, hopefully not ruined your life. But,
But you can definitely ruin a relationship over it. Yeah.
And it's not even true. So that's the power we have. So I guess it's an uplifting thing when you go, well, it can be extremely damaging, but when you realize again that your thoughts are that powerful that they can influence your life, like, all right, we'll do what Joe Dispenza talks about, craft your life from your thoughts, make it a good, happy life. It's probably easier said than done, but let's listen to this podcast, listen to Joe Dispenza, and you'll be fine.
But I guess it's a skill, if you call this skill, or exercise that you go through, just like anything else. It's not easy. The first time you go if you're going to take up running, the first time you go for a run, it's not going to be easy.
Yeah.
And so it's just like anything else. If it's something that you're committed to practicing, I think it will become easier with time. But I've learned a lot, because I've been looking at a lot of things about neuroscience since I started the expectation gaps. And one thing that I learned is that may not be well known is that you actually, every thought that you have actually creates a new pathway in your brain, or you can create new pathways. And if you keep having the same thought over and over again, it strengthens that pathway. And I'm wondering if maybe that's where those false remembrances of the past come in, because you believe it's true because you've thought about it that way so often that now it's true in your head because that pathway is so strong.
It's terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah, terrifying. It really is. But also, like you said, terrifying and empowering at the same time, because you can create new pathways. You're not stuck with, because I think from what I understand, for a long time, people didn't understand how the brain worked and thought that, you're kind of stuck with what you got. Like, whatever brain you're born with, that's what you're stuck with. But obviously that's not true. That's been proven to not be true, that you can change your brain structure. And with your thoughts, and I'm sure other ways too. But so that is inspiring too. It is scary and inspiring at the same time.
Well, do you remember a while ago when we set ourselves a challenge and it was like, and with your shoulder pain, we haven't actually spoken about that since the last time we recapped, but have you used that again? Well, have you had to use that again where you've willed yourself into less pain? Yes.
And it doesn't last very long. So for those who aren't familiar, so I have this really chronic's not the right word, but I have a constant kind of knot in my shoulder. And so I was thinking, well, if I just focus on that, relieving that pain, and focus on loosening that up, I wonder if I can loosen it up just my thoughts. And it does work. Now, it doesn't work long term. And so I don't know that, it's not like a replacement for physical therapy or anything, I don't believe, but it does work in the moment if you really focus on it. So, because you're just telling that part of your body to do something different, I guess.
Yeah, it's very powerful like that. The challenge I set myself was around my breathing, because I'd held my breath for 2 minutes. I've only done this once, and it's enormously hard. So I don't know. Again, I'm setting a pathway saying I can't do it, but I've got to instead say I can. I held my breath for 4 minutes once, and I was so unbelievably impressed that I could do it.
4 minutes?
Like through this Wim Hof breathing.
That is insane.
they do it in 4 rounds, which is,
Okay.
they do it and build you up to 4 minutes.
Okay.
But literally, there's like this one video that I use and it just was amazing. Like, and there's people on there going, I can't believe I just held my breath for 4 minutes.
Yeah.
But again, in as much as you can follow through on the breathing, it's your mindset. You have to, like, I found I had to have my brain like ready, like, we've already done this thing, as opposed to as soon as I start doubting myself, I don't know why my body just goes, I don't think I can hold my breath that long. And I always bow out before I can get to a milestone. So,
yeah.
But one last thing, I thought I'd mention this quote.
Sure.
And we haven't talked about Alan Watts on the show yet. And we'll have to talk about some of his teachings.
Yeah,
Amanda
he's awesome.
Alan Watts.
Or was awesome, I should say.
Yeah, absolute boss. So this was a quote that Joe Sane talked about, and it was, a scholar tries to learn something every day. A student of Buddhism tries to unlearn something every day.
Yeah.
And I like that. I really think that's true because, for example, yesterday, my daughter, again, just blew my mind with how insightful she is.
Yeah.
And it just made me realize again, children have it right. I think it's so funny that you almost kind of, I'm not an example of this, but I know people who talk down to kids because they're like, kids are dumb, they're not on the same intellectual level as us and blah, blah, blah. But I think it's actually the other way around. We seem to think that adults have it all right. No, the kids have it right. And then we learn all these terrible, shitty behaviors, which cause us to get really lost, which we then pass on to our kids who have it right in the first place. So again, we need to unlearn things as much as it's good to learn about these things. And I think we've talked about some interesting stuff today. We also need to daily kind of go, well, what is an unhelpful way of viewing the world?
Yeah.
Unlearn that. And all of a sudden things get more simple. That's where our kids are at.
Yes.
They know less than us, and that's why they're so much happier, because they're not burdened by all this societal rubbish. But
yes, exactly.
Yeah, I'll conclude on that point because
I love that quote, and I'm gonna have to try to do that myself. That would be a good challenge. Like, okay, what's one thing I'm gonna unlearn today?
yeah, I like it.
I know. Sounds I wonder, really though, how easy or hard or difficult that would be. I don't know. I'm gonna try it.
I wonder that too. Like the challenge I'm trying to set myself, and again, they say that if you commit to a bigger audience, so I'm just going to consider you as my audience.
Okay.
Is one of my big fears in life is I always worry that I've got this like anxiety in me that always worries that people are laughing at me.
Oh, okay.
That like in a bad way, that they think I'm an idiot and I'm
right.
Now I'm changing the way I view this now, which is I am naturally a goof. Amanda will know this probably better than a lot of people. So I probably do make people laugh a lot because of silly things that I do.
Right.
But I'm going to try and change my mindset from, it's a bad thing to make people laugh to it's a good thing. Because I thought about it yesterday for the first time because I was in my car singing Bohemian Rhapsody really loudly. And someone across the road saw
That's a great visual.
Laughing.
Yeah.
And like my girlfriend said to me, she's like, but keep in mind, all he would see is you being in the car being like
well, yeah, exactly.
She said, of course, that's a funny thing. So I thought the point I'm trying to get to, I guess, is actually if someone's laughing, that's a good thing, right?
It's a great thing.
It releases endorphins and makes people happy. So if my greatest fear, which is people will laugh at me, is actually, maybe that's a superpower. Maybe I'm meant to be a dickhead. Sorry to swear so much on this episode, but maybe that's my goal because it'll make people laugh. I don't know.
Right.
That's
exactly. See, I like it. I'm going to have to ask you about that next time.
Yes, please do.
We'll hold you accountable.
Yes, please do.
So should we wrap things up?
We should. Sorry, I've been talking too much.
No, that's fine. Did you want to introduce our guest for next week quickly?
Yes, so we're going to have Kylie Stone on the show. So we're going to flick through some questions on leadership because she is the CEO of the Performance Code, and I think she's going to have a lot of value to add. So if you're interested in leadership and building on what we talked about in our last episode, tune in for that one. But in the meantime, I'll maybe throw to you.
All right, so we'll wrap it up. So, again, you can support us in all the ways that you already know how to support us, which are by liking, commenting, subscribing, all that good stuff. You can hop on over to Coffee to support us with as little as $1 to help us keep this thing going. And we really appreciate you sticking around, and we hope that you gained some wisdom today, or at least took one thing away from it, or found something to stay curious about. How about that? You at least found something to stay curious about. So we'll say until next time, cheers to not settling.
Bye.
Take care.